Welcome back. Recent cases of sexual violence in the country may be receiving the attention of those in authority. The wife of the Kebbi State Governor, Zainab Bagudu, who was in London with some prominent Nigerians, recently spoke about efforts being made across board to address the menace. I'd like to say that in our report on the same subject last night, one of the news bars suggested that the First Lady of Nigeria, Mrs. Aisha Buhari, met with governors' wives in London. This is not the case, and we apologize for the error.
A recent study commissioned by the United Nations Population Fund Nigeria found that over a quarter of women aged between 25 to 39 have experienced physical violence. This heightened publicity has led to a rise in activism to put an end to the abuse.
We have the tendency to keep quiet and brush things under the carpet and not talk about it in our culture. Not just abuse, but so many things. And we are trying to be outspoken about this particular issue so that our children can have better lives.
In some homes, violence against women is almost accepted as a fact of life.
Do you think that women can speak out when they are being abused for the fear of sending them packing to their father's house? Don't I know that it's a taboo that when you have left your father's house to marry, then coming back again to say somebody has you are driven out from the home? If you don't address this and put a stop to the for it, to stop the perpetrator from perpetrating this act, you know what trauma means? Lives with the children for life.
Challenges in efforts to eliminate violence against women in Nigeria can also be legal.
It is most undesirable. We know that the laws in existence are such that must keep the courts very busy in attending to these cases. What I think is that there should be special provision made for them so that they can easily attend to these matters. And by so doing, those indulging in these improper practices will gradually recede.
Eliminating all forms of abuse against women in Nigeria will take some time, but time is running out. Raising awareness and seeking political support is just the first step in keeping Nigerian women safe. Juliana Olayinka, Channels Television News.
Going to Anne Wawodo now for business news.
You First. First Bank.
Thanks a lot, Amarachi. Welcome to the world of business. President Muhammadu Buhari says he remains extremely concerned over the persistent gridlock in Apapa that has affected commercial activities in the port area of Lagos. The president made this known today when he met with key members of the Lagos State Chamber of Commerce and Industry. President Buhari explains that although the Apapa gridlock still remains a big challenge in his administration, he is optimistic that the problem will soon be resolved as the federal and Lagos State governments are working together to end this. The federal government is currently working with the Lagos State government to end it. Just 2 months ago, the president gave an executive order for the Apapa gridlock, which has now become a nightmare to people. The bears have an upper hand on the last trading day in the month of July at the domestic stock market. Investors extending profit taking on major bellwether stocks on the NSE. Let's hear more from BC Adebayo.
Hello and welcome to the Stock Markets Report. The final trading day of July bowed to intense sell pressure, which dominated the better part of the month, just like the month of June. This followed heavy profit taking from consumer goods blue chips such as Nestle and Nigerian breweries, which pushed the all-share index further away from the 28,000 points. Oil and gas key components added to the downturn. On the other hand, performance on the activity chart improved slightly compared to Tuesday's session, as total volume of shares traded increased by 96.68 million units to 251.93 million, and that was largely driven for a second day by the trio of Tier 1 lenders Zenith Bank, FBN Holdings and UBA. Meanwhile, the price table recorded 20 gainers and losers apiece, with the share price of Julius Berger as the best performer, up 9.87%, while University Press is lead decliner, down 10% today. And that's it on the stock market reports. I am Bisi Adebayo.
Thank you, BC. It's also mostly negative close for major global markets around the world. Investors are reacting to comments from the Federal Reserve's chairman over upcoming interest rates decision. Let's take a look at the closing figures for today. I will see if August favors stock markets around the world. And that's Business News Tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Anne Nwaudu. Back to you, Marachi.
You First. First Bank.
Thanks, Anne. On the foreign scene, the Israeli government today announced its approval for the construction of 6,000 new homes for Jewish settlers in the occupied West Bank and 700 new homes for Palestinians there as well. The Palestinian government has dismissed it, rejecting any Israeli construction or control over Palestinian construction in the West Bank. Let's bring in Simon Pusey now with Around the World in 5.
Good evening from the Channel's newsroom here in London. 10 Democratic presidential hopefuls have clashed in a televised US debate that laid bare the party's deep divisions over how best to win the 2020 election.
But now he's talking about a different issue.
Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders, the most liberal candidates in the crowded field, came under attack from their more moderate colleagues. The 3 women and 7 men on stage in Michigan debated healthcare, border policy, and, most importantly, how to defeat Donald Trump. 10 more Democrats, including Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, debate on Wednesday. The winner of the Democratic presidential nomination will be announced next July at the party convention, while the presidential election will take place months later in November 2020. The one topic uniting the candidates was the need to defeat the current president.
And the reason we are going to defeat Trump and beat him badly is that he is a fraud and a phony, and we're going to expose him for what he is. Trump is a pathological liar. I tell the truth.
Democrats win when we figure out what is right and we get out there and fight for it. I am not afraid. And for Democrats to win, you can't be afraid either.
A roadside bomb in western Afghanistan has killed at least 35 people travelling on a bus, including children, and injuring 27 others. Security has been deteriorating across the country, with the Taliban and Islamic State fighters mounting near daily attacks on Afghan forces, government employees and civilians. A police spokesperson said most of the dead or injured in the blast on the highway linked to the provincial capitals of Herat and Kandahar were women and children. A Taliban official said their fighters were not responsible for planting landmines in the area. So far, no militant group has claimed responsibility for the attack. North Korea has fired 2 short-range ballistic missiles off its east coast. That's according to the South Korean military, the second such launch in a week. The 2 missiles were launched from the Wonsan area early on Wednesday. Last week's launch was the first such action since US President Donald Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un met in June. The North called the launch a solemn warning to Seoul over its planned military exercises with the United States. The latest round of trade talks between the US and China has come to a close, with China's foreign ministry saying America should show more honesty in future talks. China has also accused the US of flip-flopping on trade negotiations over the last year. There were some positive signals, though, with the 2 sides discussing China's increased purchases of agricultural products from the US. After the talks, the leading members of the US trade delegation joined other senior US trade officials in posing for photos with Chinese Vice Premier Liu He and other Chinese officials. The next talks are planned for September. More than 40 people have appeared in a Hong Kong court charged with rioting for their role in the recent protest that turned violent. Over the weekend, thousands of activists clashed with police near Beijing's main representative office in the city. A wave of protests that began in late April have plunged the former British colony into its biggest political crisis since its return to Chinese rule in 1997. This is the first time authorities have used the rioting charge, and it could increase tensions further, with people demanding the government avoid using the term riot to refer to the demonstrations. Yemen has once again been overtaken by a massive locust plague due to the lack of government oversight and the civil war raging inside the country. The Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations warns the local government that the locusts are expected to pose the greatest threat to agricultural production in Yemen and nearby countries over the next 3 months. The Indian Ocean cyclone last year provided favourable meteorological conditions for the locusts to breed in western Oman, eastern Yemen and southern Saudi Arabia. Additionally, the rainy season and high temperatures have also further boosted the hatching of the locusts. A new Russian cargo ship has launched into orbit on a delivery mission for astronauts on the International Space Station.
And liftoff. Progress 73 on its way in the fast lane to the International Space Station.
The Progress 73 cargo ship, packed with nearly 3 tons of supplies for the station's crew, lifted off from a Soyuz rocket in Kazakhstan. The spacecraft should reach the space station in just under 4 hours, that's according to NASA officials. Progress 73 is carrying oxygen, water, propellant and dry supplies like food and clothing for the astronauts. And finally, the Red Bull Flug Tag competition has taken place in Moscow. Thousands of spectators gathered at Moscow Canal to watch 38 teams push their homemade human-powered vehicles from a pier into the water. Flug tag means flight day, with the aim of trying to fly at least a few meters before crashing into the water. Sadly, there were a few contraptions that struggled to even make it to the end of the runway. And that's your international news around the world in 5.
Thanks, Simon. Back here, at least 15 persons are feared killed in a boat mishap that occurred on River Malale in Borgu local government area of Niger State. The Niger State Emergency Management Agency says information about the incident, which occurred at the weekend, only started filtering out on Tuesday evening due to lack of communication. The State Director General of the agency, Mr. Ibrahim Inga, says some persons survived the incident while others are still missing and search and rescue still ongoing. The victims were said to be returning from Wara Market, a border community in Ngaski local government area of Kebbi State, to Sabo Yumu in Borgu local government area when the accident occurred. Still ahead on the news at 10, a court of arbitration for sports overturns CAF Executive Committee decision to replay the Champions League final second leg between Esperance and Wydad Casablanca. That's on Sports News. Please stay with us.